This is March 11th of Backroads of Illinois edition. I'm your host, Cesar Delgado. For today, this is your agricultural news and information about the agricultural industry in Midwest alongside the countryside. The World Agricultural Supply and Demand Estimate report were bullish from Brazil's soybean production. It was pretty poor yield in Brazil's soybean complex and the corn yields as well. I interviewed Joanna Calusi from the University of Illinois at College of Agricultural and Consumer Environment Sciences in Champaign, Illinois. Joanna say that beans are looking for yields in poor conditions in Mato Grosso, Brazil since December. Congress is back from the Farm Bill because the senators disagree with key issues with CPR, and SNAP program is designed specifically for the families that they can't afford it for food and lunch at school. We were back with Kelly Garrett about his family farm, and his group is helping the farmers with their way after Kelly. We were talking with Chip. I'm joining with Kelly Garrett from Northwest Iowa with his family farm and his family. Welcome to the show. Let's start with our conversation about your family farm in Iowa. Could you tell our listeners about your farm operation?
You bet. We farm about 7,000 acres, all no-till. We use cover crops. We're mostly corn, some soybeans, and a bit of winter wheat. Pardon me. We also have 600 beef cows. We sell steers as feeders, and we finish out the heifers and put it through our meat store, GLC Beef. We have a website, glcbeef.com, if everybody's interested. Every product that comes out of GLC Beef is from a Black Angus heifer that is all natural, which means no hormones, no antibiotics. Everything has been aged 2 weeks and is individually cryovac. We're really proud of the product that we put forth there. The company takes the byproduct from a soybean plant, and they do what's called acidulation. So they acidulate the byproduct, and they're taking about 20% of the acidulation takes about 20% of the byproduct out, and they make liquid. Is our main source of fertility. So our farm is incredibly sustainable, incredibly regenerative, because we really just don't purchase much synthetic fertility at all.
That's awesome, Kelly. What is your opinion on regenerative agriculture for the future in the Midwest? Could you explain how are we going to use it?
You know, I believe, I will tell you, how do I explain this? You know, Corn Growers Association yield contest. And so we are what's considered a high yield farmer, I guess, by some, you know, and really, you know, we don't try to be a high yield farmer. We try to conduct research and just see how good we can do. And my regenerative or sustainable path is converging with my high yield path, because the more we research and the more education we get, what we are learning is that, again, those two paths are converging, and we're learning to work in collaboration with Mother.
You're in extreme ag with other farmers. What is there to be great about it?
Extreme Ag is a group of 6 or 7 high yield farmers from across the United States. Matt's in Chad's in Alabama, Kevin's in North Carolina, Johnny's in Tennessee, and Temple is in Maryland. And we all are just progressive farmers that enjoy working together and being around each other and learning from each other. So we started Extreme Ag to help improve our about Temple, about the disease from Kevin, learning about the lack of the need of dry fertility from Chad, learning about business from Johnny, learning about hormones and stress mitigations from Lee in South Dakota. And so we all just learned so much from each other that we created Extreme Ag as kind of a peer learning group, and farmers can join it for $750 a year. So it is, it's very, it's very affordable to is just really is just a peer group to help farmers improve their ROI.
Do you have any final thoughts on this planting season in Iowa?
The weather forecast that I subscribe to says it's going to be a late spring. The weather's pretty nice, and it kind of gives us all the itch to think about getting started very early. But then I get my weather forecast, and they talk about it turning colder and wet and having a late spring. We're even forecast to have a frost on May 10th through the 14th. It confounds me a little bit as to what to do, and so I haven't decided yet. Here we sit today is March 11th. Yeah, as we get closer to April 1st, I'll firm up the plan. I will tell you that I always have the desire to be in the field especially with soybeans, but I'm going to have to keep an eye on this forecast because, like I said, I believe there's a possibility for it to be late because I have a lot of faith in my weather forecast.
Yeah, I'm afraid, but I am pretty ready.
No.
Thanks for coming, Kelly.
Thank you for having me, Cesar. It was a great honor to be on with you. I really appreciate the opportunity.
This is Kelly Garrett from Northwest Iowa on back roads of Illinois. We were coming back with Chip Neliliniger for Blue Reef Finance in Morton. We were back with Chip Neliliniger for Blue Reef Agri Marketing in Morton, Illinois. How are you, Chip and Morton?
Doing good, Cesar. Thanks for asking. It looks like it's been beautiful around here. It seems like early spring's coming.
Let's go to talk with our conversation about the World Agricultural Supply and Demand Estimate report on last Friday. Otherwise, what is your thoughts with that?
Yeah, we had kind of a neutral report, maybe even seen as a touch negative. First of all, in all the domestic stuff, corn and beans were left unchanged as far as ending stocks and demand goes, and so no surprise there. We saw an increase of 15 million bushels on the wheat ending stocks, so nothing friendly there. Probably the biggest thing that the market was watching were the South American numbers, and the USDA only went down 1 million ton on the Brazil bean crop. The market had expected I guess, a 3-4 million metric ton drop. So it was seen as a little bit disappointing that the USDA didn't cut Brazil's bean crop more. We've had a lot of dry weather down there during their growing season. They're about 60 to 70% harvested, so they're finishing up harvest. But in spite of that, the market had a really decent day on Friday. The market closed higher, and then here to start the new week out, we saw corn and wheat have a decent day, and so we're finally shrugging off some bearish news, and maybe at a spot here on the calendar where we can kind of put a spring rally in, which is normal this time of year. We had some world numbers out as far as the carryout goes, and both corn, beans, and wheat world carryout were cut. Not dramatically, but a couple million metric tons. We increased the Chinese demand across the world, not just our exports to them, and so that cut the world carryout a little bit. And all told, we got a very friendly reaction to it, following through in corn and wheat today to the upside. I think that's a good start maybe to a better rally to unfold. Now tomorrow, Tuesday morning, we get the CONAB numbers. CONAB is kind of the equivalent of the USDA, only in Brazil. And so tomorrow morning, we'll get their updates of crop size. And they're usually much more responsive about putting changes in compared to the USDA. USDA usually is only reactionary and not proactive. And so that will be important to the bean market with what CONAB says tomorrow. They'll put a corn estimate out as well, but it seems like the world's kind of hanging on their bean number. So that could be a market moving estimate when we get that tomorrow morning. And that's usually fairly early in the morning. They're 2 to 3 hours ahead of us in the central time zone. And so that should be about somewhere around 6 to 7 a.m. central time tomorrow morning on that CONAB number for the beans, Cesar.
Yeah, I saw that on Friday afternoon. How do you see the acreage dilemma in the Midwest from the acreage report? I heard that in the next several weeks, the farmers is pretty ready to start planting season in central Illinois. Could you explain about that?
Yeah, it's been one of the warmest winters on record for a lot of people. We're on the dry side, although we have had a little bit of rain here, especially in the eastern Corn Belt, Illinois and Indiana, over the weekend here. And overall, it's pretty warm, pretty dry. We got a lot of field work done last fall and over the winter, and so we are ready to roll on this thing if the weather, if soil temperatures start warming up here pretty nicely in late March and into the first half of April. We do have the planting intentions report, comes out March 28th, so just a couple weeks out. That's always a real wild card as far as what the market expects out of that. In general, we're expecting less corn acres, more bean acres. Cotton has had a nice rally, and so that might potentially be some could steal acres away from corn in the South. And producers in the Dakotas, especially North Dakota, had a really strong corn yield when that report comes out, and that'll be Thursday the 28th. And then we've got Good Friday right after that and a long weekend. And so it could be a market moving report on that acreage report on the 28th, Cesar. Yeah, Cesar, I'm worried we're going to see one more dose of cold weather here. But boy, it's sure not in the forecast. We're up in the 60s and 70s. So we've got a lot ahead of us in the grain markets. That's uncertain. We don't know the size of the Brazil bean crop yet. They're finishing up planting on second crop corn in Brazil. So the next 2.5 months, critically important. It's getting a little dry for them. And then we talked about our acreage and then our spring weather and our entire growing season. So next few months, we got a lot of information, a lot of uncertainty to hit our grain markets, and I think it's going to increase volatility and give us some chances at higher levels in order to get some stuff.
Mm.
How are the grain market for today's close?
Yep, pretty decent. We saw corn close up 2 in the May contract. Wheat in Chicago wheat was up 9.5. So really decent days there, especially after trading lower in the overnight and early morning. We reversed that. Wheat closed 24 cents off of its overnight Sunday night lows. So that was a good performance there. Corn was about 8 cents off its lows, 8.5, I guess. In the May, 11.79 a quarter, about 4.25 off the lows. But that might just be out. CONAB numbers are released, and that will be a real important report for the bean market tomorrow when they release that information.
Now that we're going to talk about the livestock market for today.
Yeah, we've had some decent livestock markets. In fact, late last week and then early this week, pushed live cattle futures up into some multi-month highs before we kind of reversed. So April cattle closed unchanged today, 187.60. A lot of people wondering if we won't be able to push up north of 190. So they've had a really strong comeback over the last two and a half months. Got feeder cattle. We're down about $1. Same thing there. This little bit of a rally we've seen in corn has pressured feeder cattle. Hogs were lower today, $1.10 lower at 83.27 in the April lean hogs, but they're up near multi-month highs here as well. So that might be the one bright spot we've seen here recently is the livestock sector has been making some more in the tank.
What is your advice to the livestock producer in these markets?
Hogs are probably pretty easier decision for me. You've got summer month hogs north of 100. I know that typically we see some strength into the summertime frame, grilling season, when the weather starts getting nicer here. But I think you really have to take a look, north of 100 on these summer month hogs. And cattle, case by case scenario, things look fairly strong. Our cash markets have remained strong. Our box beef remains at good levels. And so the last, say, 2-3 weeks hold, we could be a little bit patient on live cattle and maybe expecting rallies. So, for example, maybe up towards 190 on the Aprils, and maybe closer to that 190 on these summer months. So, possibly $3 in the front end, $7 on some of the deferred live cattle. But I think the caution is if we start making couple week lows or take out the previous couple of weeks lows in live cattle, something else is probably going on that's not a good development. Either cash is starting to trade lower, or the economic picture has gotten less rosy or something. So cautiously patient in the cattle.
Do you have final thoughts on Brazilian production and world agricultural supply and demand estimate report?
Yeah, I think that's one big missing piece of the puzzle for the grain markets, especially the bean market. So there's a huge variance of opinions on what that final crop size is going to be out of Brazil, and it will really matter to price. And it's still real uncertain. I think the market has kind of looked away from the USDA because they're really not the leader when it comes to trying to get the Brazil bean crop estimated. But tomorrow, I think it's important number. It's just a matter of, does it shrink another 2, 3, 4 million metric tons, or does it shrink 6 or 8 million metric tons? And I think that'll have a dramatic impact on price. And I think it's still a big unknown. So that is still something that could really affect the market. And we won't know the entire story tomorrow because they don't even have that crop harvested yet. They are on the downside of harvest. So the next 60 days will tell more of the tale. But the Brazil crop size on beans will ultimately add some volatility to bean prices. And then the next 60 days on corn in Brazil, their second crop corn, they're just finishing up planting and it's dry for them. They're going to need rain and it's coming into their dry season. And so if they don't get some better rain by, second week in April, then that crop production for their second crop corn is going to go downhill, and that'll continue to support our corn market. So South American production still very much uncertain, still very much going to affect our prices here.
Thanks for coming, Chip.
Thanks for having me, Cesar. Good to talk to you.
This is Chip Neliliniger for Blue Reef Agri Marketing in Morton, Illinois. We right back with last segment on Back Roads of Illinois. Welcome back to join us again on Back Roads of Illinois. I am Cesar Delgado for right here. So yeah, the World Agricultural Supply and Demand Estimate report is pretty bearish from Friday's report. It's been non-refundable unless issued by the acreage report on March 30th. We were dealing with warm weather than average temperatures in Illinois and Iowa. I am curious, though, the corn yields for this season because of the drought in Illinois and Iowa, taking place in Iowa and over in North Dakota. Also, don't forget about Illinois primary on next Tuesday. What exactly is the result of presidential elections on November? It will be so interesting to the country, especially in Washington, D.C. Well, folks, there's go with our show for Central Illinois and Midwest. See you on Thursday because I am not going to be here on Tuesday and Wednesday, but hopefully you have a good week. For Back Roads of Illinois, I am Cesar Delgado. Have a great day.